Hello everyone and welcome back. Part 17. Oh my. At any rate, this is going to be about filling and sanding and getting the fuselage prepped for finishing. We'll be talking about how to do that, and also we're going to put the firewall on. It's just a plywood circle, a disc, and I'll show you what I'm going to do about that. There's just one little hint. I've got a clip that I'm going to run right after this one that speaks about how to go about getting your hatch into the fuselage cutout with these balsa linings and getting it in there accurately. It entails taking the cutout and slicing it. I've already got this set up. I've got a wire here on my board set up for 4 millimeters, which is the thickness of the balsa that we're using. So I'll explain that a little bit as we get to it. So without further oration from me, let's get started. And thank you for staying around this long. Okay guys, I brought this over to another workbench. This will just be a quick segment explaining about how to make the cutout for the hatch fit your balsa wood lining. Let me take this apart. I hope I haven't stuck it together. Nope. Okay. I probably should have done that before I turned on the camera. I spoke in the intro about the hot wire removing 2 4 millimeter cuts from the bottom of the hatch. Of course, when you've got 4 millimeter balsa in here, you're going to have to compensate for the thickness. So what I do is I line the fuselage first and make sure that it's all good and tight and straight. Then I do the hatch. By running it over that hot wire, I can get nice even cuts, and that keeps everything nice and square. Even with that, it's very difficult to get it perfect. So in order to, what you want is the wood to wood fit. Let me put this back on there, it's rather tight. What you want is the wood to wood fit here to be as tight as possible. Let me move this around so you can see the back. You can see how this, the wood that's on the hatch has to fit down tight and snug with no gaps. There is no gap there. That's perfectly snug. The same with the front. You want the gap to disappear between the wood. Well, there's going to be a gap. I don't know of anybody that can cut it so perfectly that you're not going to have that, but the way to get around it is pretty easy. We go back to our old standby, some Durham's rock hard water putty, some of the lightweight DAP or Red Devil spackle, and some regular old water. And you mix up the filler as I explained in an earlier video. You mix it up to the consistency of peanut butter. And you take the wood that you're going to use and pin it in here against the back of the fuselage. You pin this one to the front and make sure it's nice and tight. Then you take the back of the foam and slather on some of that peanut butter consistency filler, front and back. Then when you push that down on there and push everything in tight, the filler squeezes out like toothpaste out of a tube, but it squeezes out of the joint. It fills the joint. It fills it and then squeezes out a little bead all around. Now, because this filler sands so well, it'll be easy to get that sanded down smooth and level with the rest of the fuselage. And then that way you don't have any big gaps here in the fit. Everything comes down, and it's, well, you can't, I don't know if you can see this very well in the video, but there is no gap there, and this is all going to be filled with filler. Now the next step in the process is to, of course, get this cut down and even with the fuselage. Now before we do that, we have to make sure you can't have the hatch, this cover, wiggling around while you're shaping it and getting all this shape fared into the fuselage. So the very next step that I'm going to do is I'm going to put magnets in here so that this hatch is now going to be affixed to the fuselage in its permanent position. And once it's in its permanent position, we can commence the final shaping, the final filling, and the final sanding. So that's going to happen next. I'm going to get rid of all this rough cut lumber here, and we're going to put some magnets in here to hold this in position and keep it steady. So the next clip will show the magnet installation and how to go about then putting on, we'll just mix again more filler and put that cream consistency filler then on the fuselage and start the fuselage sanding. One other step that I'm going to interject is, of course, we still have the horizontal stab and vertical stab and rudder to do. And I've got a clip showing how to cut that out. It takes about 10 seconds. And we'll start worrying about that when it comes time to really get the fuselage finished. Okay, moving right along. I'm going to tilt the camera down and do a very quick run through about how I go about putting the magnets in. I was just going to do that off screen, but then thought that as this is meant for beginners, maybe beginners might want to learn a trick on how to do this, and it's not much of a trick. So let me tilt the camera down so you can see what's going on, and then I'll just go through what I'm doing here in order to get some magnets mounted on the inside of our fuselage frame. I'm going to use 4 magnets. They are 6 millimeter by 1 or 2 millimeter magnets. As a matter of fact, hold on just a minute, let me go get them. Okay, I'm back, and here are the magnets. These are small 6 millimeter, which is equivalent to about 1/4 of an inch, by 2 millimeter, 3 millimeter. They're available everywhere, online, eBay, Amazon, anywhere. But they're just little round magnets. I'm not sure exactly what you call these, molybdenum or whatever, but they're extremely strong for their size. And we're going to use these to hold our hatch in by putting them in 4 places. Now, some people use alignment pegs and pins and all that, but I've never found that necessary. Using 4 magnets to hold a fuselage, a hatch in before, and they align perfectly, and because they're small and have such a quick grab and hold, they will not move around, they won't slide around. But you've got to get them in there accurately, and that's what we're going to do. I've made a couple of preliminary marks. There's a mark here and a mark here. This is not critical. I used to put them on this back piece here, but found that it's much easier to remove the hatch if you'll just put 2 here and then 2 in the front. Now again, the positioning of these was not very, it's not very critical. You just got to have them in there in generally that position. I merely used a metal ruler, set the metal ruler across that flat and drew a line. Now these initial points here are just guesses. This is where we're going to start. We're going to use two different size drill, a 6 millimeter, 1/4, and then the next size up a little bit larger, and there's a reason for that, and I'll show you what that reason is right here. But first of all, the first two holes that we're going to get in are going to be in the rails of the fuselage, and you don't need a drill for this. You can do it with your fingers, and you want to stay well in from the edge. You don't want your magnet out here interfering with getting this edge faired and smooth. So staying well in from the edge and just using your fingers. This is balsa after all, it's no big deal. Just use your fingers to get a little 1/4 inch hole started, and the hole only has to be deep enough so that the magnet will sit down flush to the surface. So I need to go a little bit deeper. Just cracking off, that doesn't make any difference whatsoever, because these are going to be held in with 5-minute epoxy, and they are going nowhere. Okay, all right, that one is done. Now let's get this one. Again, we come in well in from the edge, because we do not want to be running into that when we sand and fair the edges. Now, putting these holes too deep is not a problem. Too shallow is a problem. You do not want them to be too shallow. Too deep is fine, because magnetic attraction is going to pull the magnets up here in just a moment. A little craft knife, or if you guys are still using X-Actos. I quit using X-Actos years ago. Just to kind of clean up the hole. You don't want anything poking up. Poking down is fine. Now, the first of these that we install will be in here, and in here. And we'll use these then to position the next set. So this is a two-stage process. We get 2 in and 2 in, and that's how it works. Now that's why we need small holes and big holes. We're going to use the small holes here because these are just going to be positioned, you know, wherever they're positioned. We're going to use the large holes for the second step, because that allows some wiggle room. You're going to stick it in there with plenty of epoxy around it, and it's going to self-align. And self-alignment is very important, because these magnets, like any other magnets, have a polarity. They have a north, south, and they will, you don't want to put a magnet in where the poles are repelling. So we're going to let them self-align when we put these things in. All right, now, we're going to do one more set of holes, and that will be up here in the front. And again, too deep is okay, too shallow is bad. And once again, you don't want these little pieces of balsa in the way. They'll just get in the way and act as spacers, and you don't want that. It doesn't have to be particularly clean, because we're going to force a magnet in that hole, but it doesn't have to, you don't want anything laying here on top. All right. Now, what we're going to do, Now you'll notice I didn't do anything here yet, and opposite these holes back here I haven't done anything here yet, and I'll show you what we're going to do there in just a moment. But right now I need to go ahead and get 2 magnets glued in here and here for step number 1. So hold on just a minute. I'm going to pause this. I tell you, I won't pause it. I'll just fast forward it from here. But we're going to get magnets installed in here and here. No, I think I will have to pause it. I got to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. I'll be right back. Okay, I've got some 5-minute epoxy, and I'm just mixing it on a little top of a old butter tub or something. It's completely reusable because after this dries, you can just flake it off. I mixed up about half a gram of hardener and half a gram of resin. It's way too much, but trying to mix much smaller batches sometimes runs into problems. Now I've got to go find my magnets again, because when you set magnets down around a bunch of tools, guess what? They snap onto the tools. I'll be right back. Okay, I got the whole stack. I can't possibly misplace these. So this is my stack of these little magnets. Now what we're going to do is just put some epoxy in the holes that we've prepared. You don't need a huge amount, but you do need all the surrounding wood in that hole covered. Okay, got those. And now we're going to put some epoxy in here. Again, you want the surrounding wood, even the wood that got pretty much chewed up with the drill bit. You want it just epoxy soaked, and then it'll be there forever, and it just kind of help hold things in. Okay. As far as the amount of epoxy that goes in here, again, use the old 3 bears method. Not too little, not too much, just right. You don't want it running everywhere. Okay, now we've got epoxy in these holes. We've got epoxy in the holes in the fuselage itself. And here's where it's going to go from here. Let's set this aside for a second. What you do is plug and you can see they get tilted. Doesn't matter because they're about to be straightened out. Alright, these are set down in the epoxy, and what we need now, this is just a small steel ruler. Then you need to cut a piece of regular old food wrap, saran wrap. Set it over here so that the ruler does not stick to it. My air conditioner is blowing that all over the place. But then put that down fast. If you try to ease that down, the magnets are going to jump out of the holes and grab the ruler. But now that serves 2 purposes. I've got to get the other one done before it starts setting up. That ruler keeps those magnets dead flat to that surface. All right, now I've got to do the same thing here. Just pick off 2. These little things are really hard to get apart. Pick off 2 magnets and put 1 in each hole. The key here is that you absolutely do not want them protruding. And I have to go get another little metal ruler. Okay, one more time. Again, there's saran wrap across the top, and air conditioning blowing my saran wrap. Let me get this out of the way. And once more, don't just ease this down. Go ahead and just flop it on there, because if you ease it down, the magnets are going to jump out of the hole. All right, now we've got two magnets that are going to be in place in the fuselage itself. We've got two magnets that are going to be in place in the hatch. So we're going to let this cure, and then I'll be back and show you how we're going to position the next two magnets. The magnets that are going to be opposed to these, and the two magnets in here that are going to be opposed to these. Okay? I'll be back after this cures. Okay, back again. And we've given this time now to cure. So now we can take, there we go. Take the little metal ruler off, and now we have magnets mounted flush to those rails. Let's do the same thing here in the front. I'll use these 3D printed clamps in order to make sure that this was held on good and tight. There we go. Nice and smooth. They're flush to the surface, not protruding. No problem. But now, whoops, almost dropped that. Now we've got to transfer the marks from these magnets to where we're going to put the new holes. New holes are going to be drilled out here, and of course we're going to have to draw out new holes here. And the way we're going to do that is I'm going to step over here and get just a bit of paint. Be right back. Okay, I have some paint that I mixed up previously for another job. Here's a little bit of airbrush paint that I've done. So what we're going to do now is merely take the batteries that we're going to use, and we're going to let this just fall on here. That way it orients itself correctly. You don't have to worry about polarity, because it does it automatically. There we go. Correct polarity. Everything is aligned. And now we're going to do the same thing with these. Just drop them on. Oh, and a train is coming by. Drop this on. All right. So now, let the train pass in the background. So now we've got a couple of magnets here, a couple of magnets there, and we're going to put just a little dot of paint. It does not take a lot. This is a bamboo skewer. Let's see if I've got enough paint in here to do this. Oh yeah. You don't need a paintbrush full. You need just enough on a little bamboo skewer, or something to use as a brush. Just enough to coat the top. You don't want a lot on here. A lot will just make a mess. And again, we'll do the same thing here. Just enough to cover the disc of the magnet. Happy little magnets, as Bob Ross would say. And now, the only thing we're going to do is try to align this as carefully as possible. Drop it down, push it down in the back, and in the front. And now you're going to have, this one is enough to do the job, but this one made a perfect impression. Now you're going to have the location for your batteries all marked out. Now, the spacing may be a bit imperfect. You can't expect to have exact alignment like that. It just won't happen. But in order to compensate for that inexact alignment. When we drill the holes, then we're going to take these off now. Oh boy, they're super sticky. Okay. Now instead of the 6mm drill, we're going to go with a considerably larger drill and drill these pockets out. So I'll fast forward and do that, and then we'll see what happens from there. Okay, I've gotten the holes dug out, and now in order to make absolutely sure that everything is going to fit, and again, we don't want any wood protruding above the surface level. Now to make sure everything is going to fit, we're going to put the magnets back on again. Now, make sure that the magnets are aligned. Just kind of push them so that they're centered center. Doesn't have to be super precise, but you don't want one way off to the side of the other. Okay, and now do a test fit. There we go. All right, that fits down perfectly. That means that the holes are self-aligning now. Okay, so now we're going to do the exact same thing that we did before. We're going to get these off of here now once more. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing that we did before. We're going to put 5-minute epoxy into these holes. We're going to put 5-minute epoxy in here. These holes are big enough so that the battery can, so that the magnet can self-center itself and also align itself polarity-wise. That's critical. Otherwise, you're going to have these things repelling each other instead of attracting each other. So again, these larger holes now will allow that self-alignment to happen. So we'll do the same thing. We'll put the batteries, golly, I keep calling these magnets batteries. We'll put the magnets in here with some 5-minute epoxy covered with saran wrap and put that over there. Or no, we won't put that over there. Whew, wow. We'll put the saran wrap over here like this. Okay? We'll put the magnets in here, magnets in there, and then drop this in real quick so they don't jump out of their holes, and let that set up, and then we'll be done. Okay, I'll do that off camera. I've already done it with this one, so I'll show you what we're going to end up with. This is what we're going to end up with. We're going to end up with 2 magnets there, 2 magnets here, 2 magnets up in the front, 2 magnets up there, and when that closes up, it aligns. It's very hard to move that side to side. That hatch is not going anywhere, and it certainly is not going to fly off during flight. So it's there. Those 4 magnets give plenty of hold, and again, I can push this side to side, but it's hard. So now it's held in place, so we can finish sanding and shaping the fuselage now without any worries about this moving while we're doing that. So to get this off again, you have to push it sideways and off, otherwise it's there. You don't have to worry about these magnets not having enough attraction and enough power to hold that together, because that hatch is not going to move. Okay, now moving along. Well, this episode has consumed another half hour, and we'll call it a day for now and return next time and talk about, again, putting the filler. The filler will have been on the fuselage. I'll go ahead and put the filler on to the extent that we can before we put the horizontal stab on. But next time, we're going to start talking about what we're going to do to the horizontal and vertical stabilizers and the wing, the ever important wing. So if you've hung around this long, maybe we can get a couple of more airplane parts done next time. Thank you, and see you then.